They've been here, some of them have been here a long, long time. They have lifespans that are thousands of years. They're carnivorous. They are not friendly to mankind, you know, and we've been told, you shouldn't talk about that. You know, there are other people say, well, you better not talk about the reptilians. Well, you know, bull. You know, why not? According to the Andromedans, they're responsible for 31,712 children disappearing. And I'm supposed to just shut up and not say anything about it because people don't want to hear it? That's tough. That's tough.
You come across a subject like reptilian aliens here on the Earth, you better go back and do your homework, because if it sounds crazy, it's probably true. I am totally convinced that the world that we live in is being run by entities which are not human. That's my personal belief.
The bloodthirsty God of the Old Testament, I say, is this Archonic force. And the Gnostics described how the sons of God, actually the sons of the gods in the original text, interbred with the daughters of men and basically changed the human race. What the Gnostics do is talk about basically the same thing.
So it's very powerful confluence there, or synchronicity, that the Dead Sea Scrolls come out of the ground at the very same time that a celestial disk crashes into the ground in Roswell, and now we have this mixture happening. It's like, okay, how do these two things relate? Is it possible that some of the entities that are described in the Gnostic text, the Archons, for example, match up with the entities, the alleged entities that were found in the crash disk at Roswell?
They are not flesh and blood, but they can embody that which is. They are not bound by the laws of time or space. They are the whisper behind your darkest thought, the glitch in your memory, the unseen hand steering civilizations into chaos. They are the Archons. Parasitic, non-physical invaders spawned in the shadow of the stars, and they are already here. According to the Pistis Sophia, they are rulers of the aeons, seen as archonic in nature, operating as false gods or cosmic jailers. The Vedas and Puranas speak of Asuras and Rakshasas, non-human, often reptilian or shape-shifting beings who interfere with humanity. The Asuras are deceivers who pose as gods and battle for dominion over earth and the heavens. In Kabbalistic texts like the Zohar, they refer to qliphothic forces, shells or husks of spiritual impurity that cling to divine light and distort it. Some esoteric traditions link the qliphoth to archons as anti-creation entities that feed off spiritual entropy. According to the suppressed wisdom of the Nag Hammadi scriptures, rediscovered in Qumran near the Dead Sea, these entities were never meant to enter our world. They were a cosmic error, a malformed creation of the Demiurge, trapped outside the harmony of the living universe. But somehow, they found a way in. Long before recorded history, before Sumer and Egypt, there were great civilizations, Lemuria and Atlantis, beacons of consciousness and cosmic alignment. But they fell, catastrophically, not just to fire and flood, but to infiltration, corruption, a psychic virus unleashed from beyond our dimension. And the infection didn't stop with Earth. Some say the Archons latched onto entire extraterrestrial races, hijacking minds, warping intentions. Among them, the reptilian Dracos of the Draco star system, a once proud warrior race, now twisted into instruments of domination and control. This is not just our story. It is a cosmic war for consciousness, and humanity is at the center of it.
I am totally convinced for myself, and this is just one man speaking, but I am totally convinced for myself that there is such a thing as reptile alien gods or reptile aliens. Not because David Icke says so, because I'm the one that told David Icke about it when I brought him here back in 1992. Let me finish. I brought David Icke to America back in 1992, and I sat with him and talked with him about the aliens and the reptile aliens, and I showed him all my documents on it, and he got interested in it, and today he's famous for talking about a subject that I told him about a long time ago. But I believe that there are reptile aliens here. There's no doubt in my mind about that. There are many different kinds of life forms out there, and maybe some of them have come here from other places in the universe who, on their planets and on their system, they were reptilian. And they have come here, like all the other different kinds of aliens that are coming here, and they're messing with us. It's just like a party, you know, and there's a big party, and they have party crashers. Gangs come in from other places that come into the party, and they're coming in and say, hey, these are y'all a bunch of young teenagers. We're grown men like a motorcycle gang, and they come in and take over everything, and take over the whole party and destroy everything.
What about them being carnivorous, and particularly with our children, all these missing children?
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's a whole story behind that. But just go and read Don Juan, where Don Juan, the Mexican shaman priest, said that there are aliens who look like us. In his book, Carlos Castaneda's books are very famous. But he said in his book that Don Juan, the Mexican spirit teacher, said that there are aliens who look like us, but they have been manipulating us and lying to us and tricking us, and they're very, very dark and evil, and they're manipulating the whole human race, and they have been from day one. And I thought to myself, reading that, well, that's what I'm saying, the same thing. What Don Juan was telling Carlos Castaneda is that we're being ruled by entities from somewhere else who have created us, and maybe there are good ones who have come from out there and who see us as a creation and who realize what's going on. They know who our creators are and what they're doing to us. So there may be good entities out there like us who want to help us to get out from under this silly nonsense. So we're not at war with government. We're at war with these Elohim, these ancient gods who've been manipulating the human race. I've had enough of them.
Basically, the Andromedans feel that we as a race, human race here, have not had the opportunity to genuinely use our own free will because of subtle manipulations by other extraterrestrial influences here. Originally, what was to occur was that the Pleiadians were to come in and to do, or to try to straighten out this mess, because the majority of us are of Pleiadian heritage. In fact, they have said, the Andromedans, that there have been 22 races that originally colonized the Earth. The first being a group of reptilians from Alpha Draconis. Now, and human and many other different types of life forms, etc. They have said for the last 5,700 years that we have been manipulated, and our belief systems have been formulated and projected for control of us. Mm-hmm. Therefore, we are not exercising spiritual truths because they've all been hidden from us, literally taken away, or blinded, or misconstrued, or adding extra definitions and words here and there to totally misalign us with what is true. So what happened was the Pleiadians were originally supposed to get more involved. What has happened, though, is that the Andromedans are not that pleased with the Pleiadians' efforts to really try to set things straight. And it is not that the Pleiadians aren't trying, it's just that what has happened is that they, as a race, have had many civil wars and have been very much in the warrior space that we are now, especially with each other. And that they have just now made their leap away from that into spiritualness, to a higher vibration and evolution. They're truly evolving on a spiritual level.
One of the races?
The Pleiadian race as a whole.
The entire race, the entire
yes,
group. Even the bad ones that were here under the pyramid.
Yes, well, no, not them. They haven't, that's why they're here. Okay, they've made the leap. Now what's happened is when they come back here to Earth and they look at us, it is like their past comes face to face with them. And their attitude is, or their feeling is, well, you know, if we get involved in here again, we may have to become warrior-like again. Mm-hmm. So they are very hesitant about getting involved again here on Earth, outside of just some contacts. Well, the Andromedans are looking at this and saying, but this is not helping. So apparently, on some level, the torch has been passed to the Andromedans. The Andromedans are now coming back. They're here. okay, along with other groups of extraterrestrial races who have been involved with Earth at one time or another. And they are going to set things straight. They say we have a window of about 8 years. Now, here's the situation. We have a group of renegade Greys here who are creating some real devastating atrocities. They're creating a lot of fear. They're doing genetic experiments which were not authorized. The Earth was supposed to be quarantined. They've totally violated that. So have the Giza intelligence. My understanding is, or there's been some talk about the Pleiadians having gotten removed Giza intelligence. The Andromedans have said there are still a few of them here, hiding. So, what has happened is they're doing some things. The Greys, the renegade Greys, not the benevolent, okay, there are definitely two groups, are creating atrocities, and they have totally manipulated many of the superpower governments into a position of checkmate, where they can literally do nothing about the fact that they're here, that we're helping them, that the government's helping them. In other words, we can't remove them. Their technology is so superior to ours that we can't remove them. Okay, we need an outside intervention to literally help us remove them. Okay. They're doing hybridization and many other things. Also, underneath the Earth, there are a group of reptilians from Alpha Draconis. The Andromedans want me to relate to everyone that they are not benevolent, that they are in fact quite dangerous to us. And this is another reason why they're here.
Once again, let me ask you, break in. Could the reptilians, could they also have subgroups, subspecies, that some could be benevolent?
Yes, but none of them are on the planet currently.
Okay.
Essentially, they just want me to put it all together and to just put it out there, to just throw it all up in the air and let people take what it is they want. They have said that there will be many people who will be very resistant to the information, but to just go out there and put some cracks in their armor, more or less. Just to put it out there, that everybody, that they understand that everybody wants to deal with love and light, you know. But a lot of people don't want to look at the reality that there is also another part to this. You know, why is the world in such a mess that it is? There are real specific reasons behind it because of manipulation of other races.
The Gnostic writings talk about the Archons in terms of they have a great ability to manipulate and create fantasia. In other words, they can create false realities that the target thinks is real. And so we've got to keep that in mind when we are trying to understand what's going on. That I see, you know, in UFO research and in alien research, as they call it, they're still obsessed with the physical. They still have this idea of physical beings flying around in physical spacecraft, when actually that is, at least often, if not all the time, they're just projections into this reality that we see. And the real deal, the real point of manipulation of human affairs is going on way beyond what we can perceive as a reality. And so I think the reason that they take this reptilian form, in the 1940s, in Nag Hammadi in Egypt, just up from Luxor on the Nile, a sealed jar was found. And in that were writings from this Gnostic people, the pre-Christian Gnostic people. They were the people that ran the Great Library at Alexandria. Another expression of Gnostic thought later was the Cathars in southern France. And one of the common themes of Gnostic belief is that when they started having any success in communicating the way they saw the world, the Roman Church would destroy them. I mean, mercilessly destroy them. And this sealed jar contained writings, many writings, describing how the Gnostics seems to have maybe come from around 100 AD, maybe buried about 400 AD is one of the assumptions. And it's great. One of the great things about it is, unlike biblical texts and other texts that have been in the public domain over a long period of time, they can be changed and manipulated. These have been in a sealed jar. So what you get is what they are. And they talk about this force called the Archons, manipulating human affairs. They relate the Lord Archon, or Demiurge, as they called it, to the Christian, not only the Christian devil, but to the Old Testament God. And they say that the Archons in their prime form are basically energy, awareness, very distorted awareness, but an awareness. But they can take form, these writings say, and about a fifth of these writings were about the Archons. Guess the two forms that they describe that these Archons take. One, reptilian. Second, a form that looks like a grey fetus with big black eyes.
As far as the Archons are concerned, I believe the reptilians and other negative beings that work for the reptilians, that have an agenda inimical to the human race here on Earth and throughout the solar system, all the different human races throughout the solar system, they are manifestations of this archonic influence. So the reptilians are archonic in nature, the negative greys are archonic in nature, the mantis beings that are doing agendas that are not in humanity's best interests are aspects of this archonic influence, because archon means like ruler, hidden ruler. I do believe there is some pervasive energy that has a consciousness of its own, and it permeates the entire galaxy, and it's sometimes been described as having a blue energy field, sometimes it's been described as having a dark energy field, but it's parasitical in nature, and it seems to have a consciousness, and it seems to work through all these archonic beings. And there are negative archonic beings in other planes and other dimensions that plug into our reality. They've manipulated things here, so we have this miasma of sorrow, grief, rage, and pain, and hatred. And all those negative base emotions nourish these negative beings at our expense. So not only do I believe that there's an archonic element in the form of these various negative beings, but there is some kind of pervasive, all-consuming consciousness. There was a movie that Stephen King came up with years ago called The Langoliers that depicted these Pac-Man looking kind of weird creatures that just gobbled up space-time and always seemed to be chasing the protagonist. I believe there's something to that. And this energy field, whatever it is, has a consciousness.
They're like they're computer-like. And this description of the Archons in these Gnostic texts, in our language, describe them as like computer-like and mechanical. That they had no ability for creative imagination. What the writings translated call intentionality, what I would call creative imagination. Put simply, if you gave them a blank sheet of paper, they couldn't create anything. But give them a piece of paper with something on it, and they can piggyback it and twist it and distort it. And when you look at the behavior of these hybrid reptilian bloodlines, you look at the behavior of this archonic force, it's like, and I think in many ways it's more than just like, what we would call a computer virus, in the sense that if you look at a computer virus, it doesn't create anything. What it does is lock into and piggyback operating systems already created and distort them and twist them. And that's what's happened to our reality, exactly that. And the reptilian genetics, I think it takes a reptilian form so often, because that genetics is a holographic, energetic, thus genetic expression of this computer-like, non-creative, highly predictable force. Because it's a distortion of prime reality, it does not have a natural energy source. The only energy source a distortion can feed off is another distortion. It cannot feed off prime reality because it cannot lock into it, it cannot interact with it. And one of the themes, again, picked up over the years, is this reptilian archonic force in its various expressions is terrified of humanity waking up. Why? Because its food source is gone.
When we read the Dead Sea Scrolls, it becomes very clear that the Essenes, these Jewish mystics, Gnostic mystics, were having close encounters of the first, second, third, and fourth kind. They said they were seeing angels. They were seeing things in the sky. Portals were opening in the sky. But beyond that, they also had close encounters of the fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth kind. The close encounter of the eighth kind is human transformation into a celestial being. The Dead Sea Scrolls clearly describes humans being taken, possibly abducted in a modern conversation, but they didn't think of it as abduction then. They're taken into the celestial realms and transformed into an extraterrestrial or celestial being by angels who themselves were extraterrestrials. So the Dead Sea Scrolls are actually a first moment of disclosure, is what they are. This is very important because when they were discovered in 1947, there was a parallel event, the Roswell crash, when for the first time in modern history, following shortly on Kenneth Arnold's sighting of a squadron of flying discs, that mass consciousness began to think about the possibility of extraterrestrial visitors vis-a-vis the Roswell crash. So it's very powerful confluence there, or synchronicity, that the Dead Sea Scrolls come out of the ground at the very same time that a celestial disk crashes into the ground in Roswell, and now we have this mixture happening. It's like, okay, how do these two things relate? Is it possible that some of the entities that are described in the Gnostic text, the Archons, for example, match up with the entities, the alleged entities that were found in the crash disk at Roswell? When the Essenes are talking about dealing with extraterrestrial beings, are these angels, or are these somehow some other kind of celestial or extraterrestrial races? Very important, very powerful questions.
What I found so compelling about the Nag Hammadi texts, well, a number of things. One, that they were where they were for so long, from it's estimated maybe 400 BC and the information going back further, that they couldn't be messed with like the texts in the religious books that have been out in the open and therefore had the potential for being changed. And of course, biblical texts have been changed massively. So that was a big, compelling thing for me, that you were looking at what they really said rather than a manipulated version of it. But what hit me more than anything else, and was important for me, is that I came across them only after I had concluded many, many things from other sources of research since 1990. And so I wasn't looking at them as a one-stop shop for a belief system. Oh, the Nag Hammadi text, that's my belief system. They were more a confirmation, another significant strand in the tapestry of the correlation of information, ancient and modern. And what do they talk about? They talked about a force which they called Archons. They call them the formless ones because in their base state they have really no form. And I symbolized this archonic force, shall we say, as basically a computer virus. It's a very, very distorted state of awareness. And when it manifests itself in some extreme in humanity, we call these people psychopaths. It's a deeply, deeply extreme beyond belief psychopathic state of awareness. And they describe how this awareness, which they call among other names the Demiurge or the ruler, created a fake reality by making a sort of bad copy of the original reality. Now, we're back here to the ancient modern correlation, because I'm saying what they were describing in their own language and their own symbolism from long ago as we perceive time, another illusion, is actually they're describing the creation of the simulation. And it is my view that the Lord, God, and the Gnostics who were responsible for these Nag Hammadi texts, the Gnostic belief system, they describe the main manifestation of this force as the Lord Archon or Demiurge.
In the Gnostic context, the Archons are referred to as the rulers. They're thought of as agents of the Demiurge, the creator of the universe. The Apostle Paul is not very complimentary towards the Archons, describing them as demonic beings who seek to control the human race. He wrote letters warning humanity about the Archons and how they are attempting to infiltrate the human race.
The Gnostic texts are constantly pointing out that they believed the Earth was being invaded from an off-planet species called the Archons. The Archons were like an intergalactic spiritual parasite that invades the minds and psyches of common people, turning them into a type of psychopath. The Gnostics believed that these negative entities had entered into the psyches of most of our leaders, whether they're kings or politicians. The Gnostics preached that one must never fall under the sway of a leader or a religion, as that would open one up to these alien forces.
I say that what's being described in Genesis is not the creation of the world, but the creation of the simulation. And the bloodthirsty God of the Old Testament, I say, is this Archonic force. And the Gnostics described how, in very similar terms, although from another angle, as the Bible talks about how the sons of God, actually the sons of the gods in the original text, interbred with the daughters of men and basically changed the human race. What the Gnostics do is talk about basically the same thing in the Nag Hammadi texts, but they talk about the infusion as a result of this of what they call the counterfeit spirit. The counterfeit spirit is, for me, an expression of this distortion. And the common theme through the ages of some force of good and some force of what people call evil battling for supremacy. When people talk about they have a dark side, I say that's this counterfeit spirit. And the Native Americans have this concept of two wolves inside people. One is goodness and empathy and compassion. One is evil, violence, hatred. And they say, which wolf wins? The one you feed the most. And of course, we have a society in this fake reality specifically designed to make us feed the counterfeit spirit, which is this archonic distortion, as I call it, influencing human behavior and human perception. And it's a frequency band. It has to be, because it's a manifestation of the archonic frequency band.
In his letters, Paul is describing the Gnostic theory of alien intrusion, Archon intrusion into the human race, and warning us about these extraterrestrial beings that seek to take over our souls. The Zadokim are the ultra-righteous wing of the Essene movement. They believed in human perfection. In other words, that humans can become whole, holy, and complete, just like Adam and Eve. In the Gnostic belief, in the Garden of Eden story, Adam and Eve did not have bodies of flesh and blood. They had light bodies. And as a punishment, the Old Testament God Yahweh created coats of skin for humanity, the flesh and blood bodies that we inhabit. The Gnostics were intent on reclaiming our original primordial light bodies. And this is what the Zadokim referred to as perfection, returning to our original perfection. And this is very difficult for some people. They look at this and think, well, who are you to become perfect? Nobody's perfect. But the Zadokim believed that humans could transform themselves into perfect light beings, actually returning to our original condition. Gnosticism was attacked and destroyed by Christian orthodoxy because it claimed it possessed the secret teachings of Jesus, of the living Jesus, the risen or resurrected Jesus. Gnosticism also promotes the idea that any individual can have a direct, personal, and visionary experience with the risen Christ. If you can have that, what do you need a pope for? What do you need a priest for? What do you need a church hierarchy for? You don't. The church sells the past Jesus, the past actions. Gnosticism says, let's go into the future. Let's move forward.
What did the Gnostics say? The counterfeit spirit hardened the hearts of humanity. Exactly what it was designed to do. This is our connection to infinite awareness. They want us here, and here, in the belly, emotion, low vibrational. They don't want us here. It's all systematic. And so, in the end, you can talk forever about the way it's all unfolded and how it's done, but how it's undone is that everything comes from it. This knows because it's connected to that level of awareness that does know. This society worships the intellect. The intellect is the village idiot compared with knowing, with wisdom that comes from here. And therefore, the whole education system, the media, all of it, all the sources of information are directed at the intellect, not the true self. And so we celebrate scientists because they have a great mind. But do they have a great consciousness beyond mind? And we can change that whenever we choose because we're in control. The idea that some external force is in control is completely illusory. It is in theoretical control because it's persuaded us we have no power and no control over our lives and no control over events. And why we believe that will be our experience. But we can change it tomorrow. We can change it now. Just a choice.
So what Sophia, the myth, kind of represents is the urge for them to create themselves. So she exits the pleroma and then falls into a state of deficiency. And in that state of deficiency, she splits. So there's a higher version of Sophia that remains in the pleroma, which is kind of like her celestial twin. And then the lower Sophia exits. It becomes the physical universe, the cosmic, the soul of the world, which is deficient because now evil is introduced into that, or a deficiency or a corruption.
If Sophia is the creator of our divine spark, then could the Demiurge be the creator of the matter we exist in? Is he the architect of our reality?
The Demiurge becomes a representation of Sophia's irrational passions. So Sophia's irrational passions takes on the form of the Demiurge, which also becomes the rulers of the Archons.
According to Graham Hancock, the Demiurge is what humans might refer to as the biblical God or creator of the universe. And this creator created himself, angels or demons, depending on how you look at it. And these Archons help keep order in the universe.
The goddess Sophia is incarnated in the earth itself, but the earth is the domain of the Demiurge. And the project of the Demiurge is to get rid of that divine spark in humanity, to snuff it out, to stamp it out forever so that we become entirely his creatures.
In the Gnostic text, specifically the Apocryphon of John, it gives a detailed account of the various Archons. In this chapter, it suggests there are 7.
These actually correspond very nicely with the 7 planets. And the actual name of the planets in our tradition have very different names when they are called Archons in the Gnostic tradition. Saturn in the Gnostic tradition is called Yaldabaoth or Samael. Jupiter is called Io. Mars is called Sabaoth. Venus is called Astaphanos. The Sun is called Adenios. Mercury is called Eliaios. And the Moon is called Horarios. We now have an astrology where the planets appear to have influences on the personality and they vary from one to another. We have this opportunity to understand there is a ghost in the machine. Something is going on that takes the apparent mundane reality on the surface, veneer level, and you look past the veneer level and you see there is an organized plan in place.
Could the ghost in the system be the energy of Sophia reincarnating herself into goddess archetypes? And could these concepts of the Demiurge and the Archons coincide with some of the motivations of the characters in the Sumerian text?
This world is completely offset compared to our way of thinking. It really seems like science fiction. When we watch science fiction movies nowadays, we can find that the same themes are being explored. In Egyptian Gnostic texts, we find a recurrent main character. She is called Sophia. And this Sophia will become Tiamat, Tiamata from the Sumerian text. Tiamata can be decomposed in Ti, Amat, and Ta. The latter is not always added. In very concrete terms, it means Lady of Life. Ama is lady, and Ti is life. It is interesting to see that, right off, we get that she is a supreme goddess. Then we can actually find her in different mythologies. Tiamat is the archetype of the mother goddess, and as Sophia's spokesperson, is all-powerful. And according to the Sumerian text, she is going to create herself a lineage of females that we call Amashatum. This could be translated to the lizard mothers. In the Sumerian text, I think it's important to note that the Sophia energy is going to create a new being named An. You should know that the An particle also means the sky. That character is then going to create a people we find in Sumerian text. It is important to note that gods were created in artificial matrices. An creates Enki, and then Enki creates another son, who will become An's spokesperson for his agenda. His name is Enlil, and he will ceaselessly be against Enki in order to impede him and his knowledge from getting out to the humans. As soon as An steps in, things are going to change. We can see that An wants to overthrow the matriarchal royalty and enforce his own rule. This marks an important separation in the history of the Sumerian gods and of the gods in general. On the one hand, there is the matriarchal energy with Tiamat, with Sophia's energy. And on the other hand, these new gods, fresh out of the matrices, male gods who are going to revolt against Tiamat. We see Enlil going to fight Tiamat, enforcing his power. And this is what we find in the Enuma Elish.
The Sumerian texts suggest that Tiamata was defeated by Enlil, and he takes over as ruler to instill the principles of the false god. In the Gnostic text, however, it suggests that the Sophia energy that embodied Tiamata was not defeated, but rather ignored, and the knowledge of her existence was taken over by the knowledge of the Demiurge. The Gnostic texts explain to us that we have been under the influence of this great Archon who is not the true creator he fashions himself to be. And because of this, we suffer greatly under our own false reality. But the Sumerian texts remind us that throughout this battle of humanity, there's given to us an ally by the name of Enki, who fights to keep the Sophia frequency alive.
It is important to know that the so-called Gnostic texts, the ones from Nag Hammadi, were all excavated in Egypt. That is crucial information because the character of Enki lived for a while in ancient Mesopotamia, but after a while was in such disagreement with Enlil that he left for Egypt. He attempted civilizing mankind. He is then found under the name of Osiris. These archives, probably created by Enki, usually depict events that took place prior to the ones that we find in Sumerian texts. They are about the creation before creation itself.
Our misguided perception may have been the work of the ancient gods, but there is more evidence to support that the original creators of the Garden of Eden might have planted a seed on Earth.
It's as though something slipped past the redactors in the Bible. A little bit of truth came through instead of all the lies that the Demiurge has spread.